Welcome to the Fisherman's Catch on Eagle Country 103.9, and it's brought to you in part by Taft Plumbing and Septic in Ocean Park. It's a weekly chat show with Ilwaco High School Athletic Director Kevin McNulty on all things Warrior sports. It's a new fall sports season here at Ilwaco High School, and we've got a little bit of football to talk about, and then we'll get to a little bit of volleyball and cross country here towards the end of the show. But let's just get right to it and talk about this fisherman football team that got off to a really good start this past Friday, Coach. On the road, taking on a good non-league opponent in Stucca, and came out with a nice win. So why don't we get your thoughts on that game?
Well, it was a good win. Anytime you can travel your first game and have some success, it's always a good thing. We, like you said, traveled down in the Stucca, a bit of a trip, but a new opponent, somebody we'd never faced, and
oh wow!
So we stepped in there and we competed. We did some things well, and we have some things obviously we need to improve upon. So that'll be the focus this week and continuing on. I'm sure you'll hear me say in week 6, 7, and 8, we still need to do certain things, but we were in control of the game. We had a couple things that went against us and made it appear a little closer than it actually was.
All right. And from what I understand, offensively, things were working really well, especially on the ground. Alec Bell had a really big night. Why don't you talk about his performance a little bit?
Well, he did. He had 11 carries for 164 yards, I believe, and our other kid, Brandon McMullen, tailback, had 18 carries for 95 yards. So the two of them were able to get yards. We ran a little bit better in the second half. Our line started sustaining blocks better, but we have to get better in that area. Jack O'Neill threw the ball very well, especially in the first half. And he was 15 for 24 passing, 184 yards, a couple touchdowns, and did have a pick. So we're fairly balanced play calling. We had 25 passing attempts, and we had 29 running attempts. So we were a fairly balanced team and a little harder to defend in doing so. Alec Bell, he's kind of our workhorse. We did only have him rush the ball 11 times. And in the first half, I talked to our kids at halftime. Our backs were trying to get a touchdown every single carry rather than just getting up in the hole and making a one cut and heading out. They were making too many cuts, and we're not really fleet of foot back there. Jack Kino graduated. He is fairly quick and can get outside. Neither Brandon nor Alec have that running style, but they do have the bruiser mentality. And at halftime we spoke about making one cut, get headed north or south, and lower the boom and just keep the legs pumping. And Alec's first carry of the second half was actually from our 1 yard line, and 61 yards later he had us out of our own end zone, so that was a good thing. Brandon, he's kind of an all-purpose type kid. He had a couple nice kickoff returns, although they just happened at the most inopportune time. End of the first half with 3 seconds to go, they kicked off, and Brandon had a 60-yard kickoff return as the horn sounded. And then at the end of the game, he had another one that I thought he was going to go all the way. He picked it up literally at the 1 yard line and went for 70-some yards before he was tackled. We didn't get to take those and try to punch him in because it was the end of the half and end of the game. We left some scoreboard or some points hanging there that should have been on the scoreboard right at the first drive of the game. We didn't get it in, and from that point on, we kind of controlled things. It was 18-0 in the second quarter with 14 seconds to go, and Jack O'Neill, like I say, he threw the ball quite well. I mean, he put some football right there for kids. We had some drops, but he did make one read that he wished he could have got back, and they hung it out there in the flats, and the safety broke on it. And 87 yards later, the kid was in the end zone, and we were looking at an 18-6 halftime score. And that's not ever how you want to go into halftime. Yeah. Give another team some momentum. The second half, they got the ball. First few plays, we stuffed them, but they threw over the top and got a huge completion down to the 4 yard line. we were fortunate to catch the kid, and we were able to make a heck of a defensive stand and held him out on 4th and 1. We held him at the 1, and so we got the ball back, and that was kind of a momentum shift because I'm afraid if they would have taken that thing in, they would have had old Mo on their side, and we would have been looking at an 18-12 or 18-14 ball game. Instead, we were still 18-6, and then, like I mentioned earlier, Alec Bell, first carry of the second half was 61 yards off the left tackle, and we ended up going down and scoring on that drive and then come back and scored again and kind of put things in 33-6 ball game. Mm-hmm. And so we were sitting pretty good at that point. The score ended up 33-22. With 5 minutes to go, we started getting some other kids in and get their opportunity to play football and develop some kids. And unfortunately, we had a couple fumbles. 2 backs, they each got a carry, and each one of them, young and probably a little nerves. They left the ball laying on the turf, and Nestucca was able to throw the ball and scored twice in the last few minutes to make it look like it was more of a ball game than maybe it was. Offensively, we were fairly balanced, as I mentioned. We had 450 yards of offense, and we contained them fairly well. They were able to get up over the top, especially in that fourth quarter, and they ended up with 180-some yards passing and 75 rushing. So we felt good, and we've got a starting spot, and it's always good to start the season with a win. In fact, as the kids had mentioned, and I hadn't thought of this, the seniors mentioned this is the first time they've ever won the first game of the season. So It was a big deal. It wasn't something I'd thought about, but it was obviously something they'd thought about.
Yeah, a nice way to get the season going there with a nice win on the road. And we're talking to head coach of the football team, Kevin McNulty, who's also the athletic director here at Ilwaco High School. And the football season off to a very good start. A nice road win at Nestucca, where the offense and defense both play pretty well. And you mentioned how this was a new opponent for you. So looking back on the game with an opponent that you're not really familiar with, do you kind of like how the game played out and how your team was able to respond to an unfamiliar opponent?
Yes and no. It's always nice to know what the other team's going to do, and we had no clue, and they probably had no clue as well. So you're going in and you're doing adjusting and adapting as the game is going on. And that's, new coach down there, so we didn't have the luxury of last year's game film, and so it was going in kind of blind. But on the good side, we were able to focus an extra week, if you will, on what we do, not what our opponent does. So there's good and bad, and I think it helped us. Now this week, as we're preparing for this game, we know full well what we're preparing for, and little different. We're still going to do what we do, but we also prepare for an opponent.
Right. So after this first game here with your team, you kind of get an idea of their strengths and weaknesses. I mean, just after the first game, although sometimes it's kind of hard to tell exactly, what you have with your team after just one game. But just kind of looking at this one, do you think you learned a lot about your team after the first game?
Well, I think some kids stepped up that maybe you didn't expect to be that big of impact players. When I say something like that, I'm talking about a sophomore, Alex Kino, plays receiver, not a huge kid, 5'6", 125, 30 pounds, plays receiver and defensive back, and he had 7 catches for over 100 yards for us. Quick feet. Elusive, thankfully, because he's, like I say, he's not a big kid, but he's agile and able to make moves, and that was good. We knew going in that we have to have some kids catch the ball. We have a quarterback that can put the ball there. We just need some people that can catch it. Our running game ought to be something that teams focus on with the 2 backs we have, and we have some other kids coming along that have a little shiftiness to them, so we're going to take a look at some of that in the future. Like I say, they're young. The backfield right now is made up of Alec Bell, who is a senior, 1,000-yard rusher the last couple years, and then Brandon McMullen, who got some experience last year, and he's also starts at strong safety for us as well. And he's a junior. He's a good football player. And then, of course, I've mentioned our backfield with Jack O'Neill. Our line ought to be a strength of ours. We didn't play particularly like that the other night. We have good experience up front, and I thought we played a lot like a team that was out in their first game. We didn't – all the things that I'm sure the majority of the head coaches in Oregon and Washington and any place else are saying, we got to sustain our blocks. We got to stay on them. We got to play to the whistle. And we didn't necessarily do that. Our kids hit the right people, so we know that they had the knowledge of who they were supposed to block, whether we were supposed to trap, counter, etc. But we didn't always stay on the block as long as we needed. And that's something we're working on hard this week. If we can do that, I think we can have great things happen.
And so now you move on to this Friday's game, which is going to be another non-league opponent. Got to get back out on the road and taking on a Toledo team. Now, how familiar are you with this particular football team?
You know, Toledo was in the 1A with us in the Trico League, and we're familiar with them. We played them 2 years ago in the playoffs, and they beat us. They got a good football program. They got a crew of athletes going through. They return a large group. They're ranked in the top 10. In fact, our next two opponents are ranked in the top 10 in the state at our level.
Wow.
So we don't have an easy road here in the non-league schedule, and the Stucco was also a playoff team last year. So we've got our work cut out, but on the flip side of that, we want to find out where we're at. Mm-hmm. And Toledo is going to let us know. They're a 35-7 win last week over Charles Wright Academy. They have a senior quarterback. They have some backs. They have a big line. They're aggressive on defense. They're a good opponent. And, our kids, we talk to them. We shouldn't be intimidated by them, but we should relish the opportunity to find out where we are. We're going to have to, step up and play some good football. But this is the type of team that we're going to see later down the road in a playoff type game. And so it gives us an idea of where we are and what we need to work on, and an eye-opener for our kids. So looking forward to it, because we also have some things that will give them challenges, I believe.
Yeah, it's going to be another quality opponent for your guys. And, if you judging by the first game, it sounds like they're up for challenges like this. What do you think is going to be the biggest challenge for them taking on this Toledo team?
Well, like I say, they return a senior quarterback that is a good athlete. He's, a multi-sport athlete, and he's a 6'4", 235-pound kid that doesn't mind lowering his shoulder and running over you or stepping back in the pocket and swatting you away and throwing the football. So he's good. They run a wing tee offense. They run from multiple sets, but it's all wing tee stuff. And so that misdirection, they're pulling guards. They've got good-sized kids. That'll be a challenge. We have to play disciplined football. When you're playing against a wing tee like that, you have to play assignment football. And if you get out there and start guessing where the ball's going, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So from a defensive standpoint, last week they're in a 5-2, and they bring it up the middle. The guy lined up over our center is an aggressive kid. He likes to bull rush, and they'll stunt one of their linebackers. On the edge, they play their quarterback. He's, again, a good-sized kid, outside linebacker. It's going to try to funnel everything back inside. And so we're preparing for that. We're preparing to be able to block them. We're going to have to use double teams when convenient. And, Alec and Brandon are going to have to lower their pad level and give a wall up as well as take one. So we have to do that. We have to throw when they're expecting run and mix it up a little bit. We got to be able to run to set up our play action. And really looking forward to it. I wish it wasn't away. I'd like to play them at home, but it is what it is, and we'll be playing a good opponent, so we'll find out where we sit. And we're looking forward to giving them a ball game. We played them 2 years ago, as I mentioned, and we have some kids that remember that game, and they were maybe not the best sports and a little gloating on their side. So I think we have some kids that would like to, make a ball game out of it. And if not kids, we certainly have some coaches that would.
All right. They got a little bit of motivation going into this one Friday night. Going to be a tough opponent this Friday on the road at Toledo. It's the Fishermen football team, but they're off to a good start here at 1-0. But we also have volleyball and cross-country seasons going on. So why don't we get your thoughts so far on the start to the volleyball season?
Well, our volleyball coach, Rachel Ridout, has right around 20 girls out, and she's doing a great job. Highly organized and been working on a lot of fundamentals and techniques, and I can see the program headed in the right direction. Our program has struggled, and under Rachel's, as a head coach, she's got it headed in the right direction, and it's work in progress. We opened up with Nacelle on Tuesday, and we play at Winlock varsity only on Thursday. So that'll be a big week for us. Get going, and we're looking forward to it. She has nine on the varsity right now, maybe a swing player and a full JV. In fact, we'll probably get in some C games. So there's interest in the volleyball program. New assistant coach, Trish Gibson from Florida, who has a vast volleyball background. She's actually a Washington High School volleyball player that ended up playing in college in Florida and has moved back up here to the peninsula. So she's helping out, and they're working well together. So looking forward to seeing our volleyball. Unfortunately, they're out of town this week, and football's out of town, so we don't have any home athletics until next week. And so I'll have the opportunity to watch our volleyball team next week at home on Tuesday against Willapa Valley. And, of course, football's home next week as well against Kalama. So we're going to be waiting a little bit to see our kids and for a home crowd. But we do have 2 home volleyball next week and a home football. So looking forward to those things.
Yeah, it's a busy season as you get into fall sports. With the volleyball team here, what kind of experience do they have going into this season?
Well, we have some kids, and we have some new kids that have turned out, but we have Elena Marsh, who's a returning. She's a junior. She significant playing time last year. Ellie Colm is a senior, returning experience, and then Madeline Jacobson, who is an all-conference type gal last year, and she's a junior this year. And then a girl that was a freshman, of course, now she's a sophomore, Ebby McMullen. So we actually have 4 girls that started for us a lot last year, and we have some newcomers that are going to help us out as well. So it's looking good, and we're building a program and getting kids involved. We have a good number of freshmen out this year, which is something new and different, and that's what we need. So, they stay in the program, become involved, and all of a sudden, by the time they're juniors and seniors, you have things happening.
Yeah, you can kind of build a program from there with some new players coming in. And then this is also the time of year where the cross-country team is getting out there and starting here. Now, have they already been in a couple of events?
We were in one this past weekend in Tillamook, the Ultimook.
Okay.
And this week we get going on Thursday. We are at Toutle Lake, so we'll be heading up there to run. So I'll have some results next week to give you on how our cross-country meet turned out. And Coach Taylor has a good number of kids out for cross-country, too, a full boys and girls team. And I think she has in the mid-20s out running. So that's outstanding. And, of course, now we're right in the middle of starting school. Middle school sports are starting and all those good things. So as an athletic director, it's a busy time.
Yeah, definitely. You got 3 different sports going on right now. We got the football game coming up here this Friday night, and everyone's out on the road. But before we get going this week, any last thoughts before you got another football game this Friday?
Well, just excited. again, find out where we're at, where we need to improve. We're going to do some things well. We're going to do some things that we need to work on. And, like any ball game, it's going to come down to who makes fewer mistakes.
Yeah.
It's not always the best team wins. It's the team that makes fewer mistakes. And so we'll see on Friday night. It's high school football. Crazy things happen. So we're looking forward to it. Go Fishermen.
Yeah, go Fishermen. That's going to do it here for this first week of the Fisherman's Catch for the fall sports season. The Fisherman football team is taking on Toledo this Friday night at 7 o'clock. So you've been listening to the Fisherman's Catch, brought to you in part each week by Taft Plumbing and Septic in Ocean Park. And we'll be back here next Wednesday night to find out how the football team's doing and get the latest results for volleyball and cross country as well. It's the Fisherman's Catch on Eagle Country 103.9.